The restaurant glowed with a warm, golden light that made everything look softer than it really was. Outside the wide windows, the Manhattan skyline shimmered like a promise of steady, beautiful, unreachable. Olivia Carter sat there quietly, smoothing the cloth napkin on her lap, trying to ignore the way Tom checked his iPhone every few seconds, as if waiting for someone more important than her. The waiter had just placed a small candle between them, its flame wavering each time Tom sighed. She had spent the whole day imagining this dinner would be a rare moment of peace. Maybe he'd finally talk to her gently. Maybe the man she fell in love with would show up tonight. Maybe. But when the waiter returned with their sparkling water, Tom didn't even look up. He simply pulled a thick envelope from inside his sleek leather briefcase, placed it on the table, and pushed it toward her with 2 fingers, like he didn't want to touch it too much, or touch her at all. "Go ahead," he said, his voice flat. "Open it." Olivia felt her stomach twist. The envelope wasn't white. It wasn't cream. It was a deep Tiffany blue. The color of gifts, the color of anniversaries. For a second, she let herself imagine something else, maybe tickets to a weekend retreat, maybe an apology letter, maybe anything but what she already sensed. Her fingertips touched the edge of the paper, and the air around her grew heavy. She opened it slowly, trying to hold her breath steady. Legal lines, signatures, stamps from his law firm, words that blurred. Divorce, custody, mental instability, unfit mother. Her hand froze midair. "Tom," she whispered, "what is this?" "What does it look like?" he replied, lifting his wine glass but not drinking. "I'm done, Olivia. You're not what I need anymore." The words were delivered like a business memo. Not a marriage ending. Not a life tearing open. Olivia blinked hard, trying not to let the room spin. Tom went on, explaining details with the same tone he used when he rehearsed closing arguments in the mirror, cold, polished, distant. He told her he'd already spoken with a judge. He told her her emotional instability could make her lose the baby. He told her signing tonight would make things easier for both of them. She felt her throat tighten, her chest shake, but her face stayed still. She reached for the pen beside the dessert menu, a heavy Mont Blanc the waiter had placed earlier, and Tom nodded, satisfied, as if she were finally behaving. Across the room, a woman at the bar lifted her phone subtly. The camera pointed their way. Olivia didn't see her. She didn't notice anyone except the man who once swore he'd love her forever. Olivia took a breath. Then she pressed the pen to the paper. Tom leaned back, convinced he had won. But he had no idea what was about to walk through that door. Someone who would end his entire world. Olivia Carter grew up far from the shimmering skyline of New York, far from anything polished or elegant. Her world began in a quiet Midwest town where porch lights flickered at night and neighbors left their doors cracked open for breeze because the air conditioners were always breaking. Her childhood home was small, the paint chipped, the roof patched so many times that Linda, her mother, joked it looked like a quilt. But inside, it was warm. It smelled like cinnamon toast on Sundays and lavender laundry detergent on a good week. Money was always thin. Olivia remembers her mother counting bills at the kitchen table, pushing them into piles: rent, utilities, groceries, and whispering, "We'll figure it out." And somehow, they always did. Not because life was generous, but because Linda worked 2 shifts at the diner and still came home smiling. She always told Olivia, kindness is worth more than anything fancy. But underneath Linda's smile, there was something restless, something scared. On some nights, Olivia would wake to the sound of her mother quietly locking the front door again and again, checking the windows twice, drawing the curtains even though their street was nearly empty. When Olivia asked why, Linda would just pull her close and say, "Some shadows follow you longer than you expect. But you're safe. I promise you're safe with me." Olivia never understood what shadows meant. She only knew her father was gone. Not dead, not missing, just gone. Any question she asked made Linda's eyes fill with guilt. So Olivia stopped asking. Growing up, she didn't have designer toys or vacations. Her favorite possession was a hand-me-down library book about New York City. She used to trace the skyline with her finger, imagining herself walking under those tall buildings one day, wearing a pretty coat, carrying a warm coffee, living a life where no one had to count bills at the kitchen table. In high school, she worked at a diner after classes, serving burgers and wiping down booths. She saved her tips in an old Amazon box under her bed. When she finally left for community college, Linda slipped a note inside the box. "You deserve a life bigger than fear." 1. But fear followed them anyway. During Olivia's college years in Chicago, her mother called one night in a trembling voice. "Just be careful," she said. "Don't trust people too quickly. Some smiles hide motives." When Olivia asked what happened, Linda said it was nothing. Yet the next time Olivia visited home, she noticed the locks were new, the curtains thicker, and Linda seemed to jump at every car driving by. Still, Olivia studied hard. She worked as a receptionist at a small event agency, trying to imagine a brighter future. She didn't have wealth, connections, or family legacy. What she had was endurance, the quiet kind built from years of stretching every dollar and swallowing every fear. And maybe that was why Tom Reed seemed like the answer to every whispered prayer. He walked into her life during a corporate event. She was helping coordinate a tall, confident Manhattan attorney with a perfect smile and the polish of someone who belonged in the skyline she used to trace with her finger. Tom noticed her, praised her work, remembered her name. No one from her world had ever looked at her like that, with admiration that felt effortless. Olivia thought the universe was finally giving her something good. Someone steady, someone safe. But she was wrong. Because the man she trusted was built from the same shadows her mother had warned her about. And those shadows were about to swallow her whole. Chicago rain always had a way of turning the streets into blurry rivers of yellow and red light, reflecting every passing cab like tiny shards of broken neon. Olivia remembered that night clearly, the night Tom Reed stepped into her story, as one of those evenings when everything felt soaked and rushed and bigger than she was prepared for. She was working a corporate cocktail event at a downtown hotel, juggling guest lists on her clipboard and answering questions from executives who didn't bother learning her name. Her cheap flats were soaked, her hair frizzing from humidity, and she was praying the projector wouldn't fail again. She was wiping down a spilled drink near the bar when a voice behind her said, "You must be the only one here who knows what she's doing." She looked up, and there he was. Tom Reed, tall, sharply dressed, brown hair slicked back just enough to look effortless. He carried a MacBook Pro under one arm and a confidence that filled the room like cologne. The first thing he did was offer her a fresh napkin. The second thing he did was smile wide, warm, admiring. No one in Olivia's life had ever looked at her that way. "What's your name?" he asked. "Olivia," she replied, suddenly aware of the water stains on her shoes. "Well, Olivia," he said lightly, "you're holding this event together. I've been to 1,000 of these, and trust me, you're better than half the coordinators in Manhattan." Her cheeks warmed. No boss had ever said anything like that. No man had either. Throughout the evening, Tom found reasons to circle back to her, asking about her background, her dreams, why she chose event planning. He spoke about New York the way people speak about destiny. Skyscrapers glowing like ambition, rooftop bars overlooking the Hudson, morning walks through Central Park with a perfect coffee in hand. He painted a life Olivia had only seen in magazines at the library. And with every story, she felt something inside her stretch, like the world she wanted was suddenly within reach. After the event wrapped, he invited her for a drink at the hotel lounge. She said yes before her fear could say no. They sat across from each other in a dim booth, him sipping whiskey, her stirring a ginger ale she never even tasted. His eyes never left her face. "You're different," he said. "Soft in a world that's hard. Women like you, they make a man want to be better." Nobody had ever described her as something precious. Nobody had ever seen her softness as a strength. Tom made her feel chosen, wanted, special. What Olivia didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that Tom had looked her up the moment she stepped away to help a guest. He had checked her social media, her school, her job history. He saw no powerful family, no wealthy background, no complicated connections. To a man like Tom, that meant one thing: she was safe to control, easy to shape, and unlikely to ever leave him. But Olivia didn't see that darkness behind his charm. She only saw a door opening. When Tom invited her to visit New York the following month, she couldn't sleep for days. She imagined the skyline she'd traced as a little girl now rising in front of her for real. She imagined walking those streets with a man who seemed to belong to them. And when she finally stepped off the plane at LaGuardia, Tom was waiting with a bouquet of lilies and a smile that felt like fate. She thought she was stepping into a new chapter of her life. She didn't realize she was stepping into his world. A world built on power, secrets, and dangerous intentions she couldn't see yet. New York had a way of making every emotion feel louder, brighter, sharper. For Olivia, those first months with Tom felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. A better, cleaner, shinier one. He took her to rooftop restaurants where the city sparkled like 1,000 diamonds, to cocktail nights where people laughed too loudly and drank even louder, and to little cafes in Soho where they shared pastries she couldn't pronounce. And she believed him when he said, "You belong here, Olivia. With me." No man had ever spoken to her with such certainty. So when he proposed, she didn't think twice. It happened one soft spring evening in a rooftop garden overlooking the East River. Lanterns glowed in warm amber tones, the breeze lifted the hem of her thrift store dress, and Tom dropped to one knee with a Tiffany blue box that made her gasp. The ring inside wasn't enormous, but to her it looked like a miracle. A promise she had never imagined receiving. "Marry me," he whispered, "and I'll give you a life where you never need to fear anything again." Those words pierced every wound she'd carried since childhood, every fear her mother's trembling voice had planted. Every night she had watched Linda double-checking locks. Safe. Loved. Chosen. That's what she thought the ring meant. The wedding came fast, too fast. Tom pushed for it. "Why wait?" he kept saying. "We know we want each other." Olivia, overwhelmed and dazzled, agreed. She told herself that quick decisions weren't always bad decisions. Sometimes they meant love was real, powerful, undeniable. But in the rush, small red flags fluttered around her, quiet, almost shy, but present. Tom refused a church wedding, saying it was too old-fashioned. He insisted on a small ceremony, saying he hated big crowds. He said his parents couldn't make it, but sent their blessing. Every explanation made sense individually. Together, they felt strangely hollow. Olivia didn't question it. She wanted so badly to believe she was finally getting the life she deserved. The ceremony took place in a rented garden behind a boutique hotel in Chicago. White folding chairs, modest flowers, soft music from a Bluetooth speaker that kept cutting out. Linda held Olivia's hands tightly before she walked down the aisle, tears trembling in her eyes. Tears Olivia didn't understand but would one day recognize as fear. Tom looked handsome, perfect, controlled, too controlled. When her friends made easy conversation with him, he responded politely but with a distant air, as if he was tolerating the small talk rather than enjoying it. During the vows, he smiled at all the right moments. But when the champagne flowed at the small reception afterward, he leaned close and whispered something Olivia never forgot. "Remember, you're mine now. No running back home every time you doubt yourself." It sounded like a joke. It wasn't. The strangest moment of the night came when an unfamiliar woman approached Olivia, tall, elegant figure with sharp eyes and a trench coat despite the warm weather. She held a small envelope and pressed it gently into Olivia's hand. "Your mother did what she thought was right," she murmured. "One day, you'll understand." Before Olivia could ask anything, the woman vanished into the parking lot. When she opened the envelope later, it was empty. She assumed it was a prank. But it wasn't. That woman would return in her life again, and she was tied to secrets Olivia had no idea existed. For now, Olivia danced with her new husband under soft garden lights, thinking she had finally escaped the shadows of her childhood. She didn't know she had just married into a storm that would soon try to break her entirely. Manhattan looked like a dream the day Olivia arrived as a new bride. Taxis, honking, sunlight bouncing off glass towers, people rushing with purpose. She pressed her forehead against the cab window, feeling the thrill of beginning a new life. Tom had his hand on her knee, smiling with quiet pride as though he had brought home something precious. Their apartment was small but stylish, perched on the edge of the Upper East Side, with a narrow view of the river if she leaned over the kitchen sink and squinted. To Olivia, it felt luxurious. To Tom, it was temporary, a stepping stone until he made partner. She didn't mind. She believed in him. The first weeks were sweet enough to make her forget the uneasy moments from the wedding. Tom brought her croissants from a bakery near Park Avenue, and they ate them on the fire escape like two young dreamers. He introduced her to restaurants where menus didn't list prices. He let her pick out a new coat for winter, simple, black, elegant. But slowly, the shine wore off. Tom began coming home late, claiming long nights at the firm. Olivia waited with dinners that grew cold, candles that melted down to useless puddles. When he did come home, he often smelled of wine and expensive perfume she didn't own. He explained it away. Client dinners, networking, part of the job. He said it so calmly that Olivia felt guilty for even wondering. She found a job as an assistant event planner for a small agency. She thought he would be happy for her, but when she told him, Tom only nodded and said, "Just don't let it interfere with the housework, okay? My schedule is packed enough." Housework, as if she had nothing else to offer. At her job, the Manhattan women were elegant, fast-talking, confident. Olivia tried to blend in, but her thrifted dresses and quiet voice made her stand out in the wrong ways. Co-workers laughed behind her back, calling her small-town Olivia, farm girl, the charity case. One afternoon, she overheard two of them whispering, "Tom Reed's wife? Seriously?" He could have done so much better. Tom. It stung so deeply she had to lock herself in a supply closet to cry. The distance between her and Tom stretched wider each week. He began correcting her how she spoke, how she dressed, how she arranged furniture. One night, he glanced at her outfit before a firm dinner and said, "Could you try harder? You look basic." She spent the next hour scrubbing off her makeup and redoing it twice. The worst blow came one chilly evening when Olivia walked into the living room and found Tom sitting with a group of partners from the firm. She smiled nervously, trying to be polite. But when she accidentally mispronounced a client's name, the room erupted in subtle smirks. Tom laughed with them, not gently, not protectively, cruelly. After they left, she whispered, "Why did you laugh?" He shrugged, "Relax. They're just joking. Don't be so sensitive." Sensitive, insecure, overreacting. He repeated those words so much they became the anthem of their marriage. The city she once dreamed of now felt like a towering cage. Every sidewalk felt colder, every subway ride heavier. The skyline she once traced with her finger as a child no longer looked like hope. It looked like an unreachable world she didn't belong to. And yet, Olivia kept trying. Because she believed marriage meant commitment through storms. Because she loved the man she thought Tom was. Because she didn't know what he was hiding. But beneath all that glittering city noise, deeper cracks were forming. Tom wasn't just pulling away. He was preparing to replace her. And Olivia was the only person who didn't see it coming. The night everything began to unravel started quietly, too quietly. Olivia had finished arranging place cards for an upcoming charity gala and decided to surprise Tom with dinner. She packed his favorite takeout and took a cab to his office tower on Park Avenue. The lobby lights glowed like liquid gold, and the security guard recognized her, waving her through with a polite smile. She took the elevator up to the 34th floor, humming softly, proud of herself for trying to reconnect. But the moment the elevator doors opened, something felt wrong. The hall lights were dim, the entire floor strangely still except for a faint sound laughter, soft and intimate, coming from the glass-walled conference room. Olivia's feet moved before her mind caught up. She walked toward the glow, each step heavier than the last. And then she saw it. Tom. And a woman, Kayla Miller, leaning close to him, her hand brushing his tie as they looked over a document. Kayla. The young associate everyone gossiped about. Smart, beautiful, ambitious. The kind of woman who wore designer heels without flinching and never stumbled over her words. Kayla was laughing at something Tom whispered, touching his arm like it belonged to her. Olivia froze. Her breath caught. The takeout bag slipped from her hand, the plastic containers hitting the carpet with a dull thud. Tom's head snapped up. Kayla jerked back, adjusting her blouse too quickly. "Olivia," he said, as if she were the intruder. "What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled. "I brought you dinner." Kayla stepped away, murmuring something about needing to finish emails. She left the room with her eyes down, but Olivia caught the smirk tiny, smug, victorious. The humiliation burned. But worse was the way Tom walked toward her, not guilty or apologetic, but irritated. "You can't just show up," he hissed. "This is my workplace. I just wanted to." "Needed to what? Check on me? Spy on me?" Her mouth opened, closed. "I wasn't spying. I missed you." Shin. Tom let out a sharp breath, the kind that made her stomach twist. You always overreact. Kayla and I were working. That's it. But she had seen the way they stood too close. The way his voice softened around her. The softness she hadn't heard, directed at herself in months. Tom. Why was she fixing your tie? He rolled his eyes. God, Olivia. You're being dramatic again. Again. That word crushed her. She bent down to pick up the spilled food, trying to hide her tears. But Tom grabbed her wrist, not hard enough to bruise, but hard enough to warn. Stop acting desperate, he muttered. You're embarrassing both of us. Desperate. Embarrassing. She felt the words sink like stones in her chest. On the ride home, Olivia sat against the cold cab window, trying to steady her breathing. She replayed everything: Kayla's touch, Tom's tone, the subtle cruelty in every word. She wondered when she had become the problem in her own marriage. At home, she checked Tom's iPad, something she never did, but tonight her heart wouldn't let her rest. When the screen lit up, messages appeared instantly. Kayla. I wish we didn't have to hide. Tom. Soon. Kayla. Did she suspect anything? Tom. She never suspects anything. Olivia's vision blurred. Her hands shook so violently she almost dropped the device. Before she could read more, the apartment door clicked. Tom stepped inside, loosening his tie, the same tie Kayla had touched hours earlier. He saw the iPad in her hands. And instead of fear, he smirked. You should really stop snooping, he said, taking it from her. It makes you look unstable. Unstable. The word cut deep. That night, Olivia lay awake, listening to Tom breathe beside her, calm and indifferent. She stared at the ceiling with tears drying on her cheeks, feeling the truth settle in her bones. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't imagining things. Her husband was already halfway out of the marriage. And the worst part was he wanted her to believe it was her fault. The morning Olivia discovered she was pregnant was one of those gray New York mornings where the sky felt heavy, as if it were holding its breath. She stood barefoot in their small bathroom, shivering not from cold but from fear and hope tangled together. The pregnancy test lay on the edge of the sink, 2 pink lines glowing like a miracle. A baby. A new beginning. A reason for Tom to soften, to love her again. She pressed a hand over her belly, whispering, You're not alone. I promise I'll protect you. It felt like the universe was giving her one final chance to make her marriage work. Maybe this news would pull Tom back to her. Maybe he would remember who they were before the city hardened him. She rehearsed what she would say all the way to his office. When he walked into the apartment later that evening, she sat him down at the kitchen table, holding the ultrasound referral like a fragile gift. Tom, she said softly, I'm pregnant. For a split second, just a flicker, his face went blank. No smile, no shock. Just calculation, like he was doing math in his head. Then came the reaction that knocked the breath out of her. This is not ideal, Olivia. For? Not ideal? Her vision blurred. We're not ready, he continued. My partnership review is in 6 months. A baby now? It'll derail everything. Do you understand? She stared at him, stunned. Tom, this is our child. He sighed, rubbing his forehead. Look, I'm just being realistic. Kids are expensive. And your job barely covers groceries. The words sliced deep. She swallowed hard. I thought you'd be happy. Well, I'm not, he snapped. I'm stressed enough. I can't deal with your emotions too. Your emotions. Another way of calling her unstable. Dramatic. A burden. In the following days, Tom withdrew even more, coming home late, ignoring her messages, acting annoyed when she talked about prenatal appointments. One night, while she was folding laundry, she accidentally knocked over one of his jackets. Something slid out of the pocket, a small velvet box. Her heart leapt. Was he planning something? A surprise? An apology? Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside wasn't jewelry. It was a gold locket, not new, but old, engraved with delicate initials, K.M. Kayla Miller. Under it lay a handwritten note. Soon, love. She won't hold us back much longer. The room swayed. She gripped the dresser, fighting the urge to collapse. Tom wasn't just cheating. He was planning a future with someone else. And she was the obstacle. That realization filled the air with a new kind of fear. The fear became real 2 nights later. They argued quiet at first, then louder. Tom accused her of being manipulative, claiming she got pregnant on purpose. She tried to walk away, but he blocked the hallway, breathing hard, jaw tight. "Don't you dare walk away from me," he hissed. When she tried to squeeze past, he shoved her shoulder too hard, too sudden. Olivia stumbled backward, her foot sliding on the hardwood floor. She hit the staircase railing, pain shooting through her side, her hand instinctively flying to her belly. "Tom," she gasped. He froze, eyes widening not with guilt, but with fear of consequences. "You slipped," he said quickly. "You always lose your balance. Don't twist this." She sat on the floor, shaking, the reality painfully clear. Tom didn't care if she was hurt. Tom didn't care about the baby. Tom didn't care about her at all. That night, after he left to clear his head, Olivia lay awake with her arm wrapped protectively around her stomach. She realized something terrifying. She wasn't carrying a blessing to Tom. She was carrying an inconvenience, something he was willing to push aside. The days after the fall blurred together, a mix of soreness, fear, and silence. Olivia moved through the apartment like a ghost, hand hovering protectively over her stomach with every step. Tom barely noticed. He claimed he was stressed and needed space, leaving early and returning well past midnight. When he spoke, it was with irritation. When he looked at her, it was with resentment. But the universe has a strange way of sending lifelines in the moments we feel most alone. One rainy afternoon, while Olivia was rearranging baby vitamins on the counter, the doorbell buzzed. She wasn't expecting anyone. Tom hated surprise visitors. She opened the door cautiously and found a courier standing there with a clipboard and a certified envelope. "Delivery for Olivia Carter," he said. Her heart tightened. Anything official made her anxious now. She signed and closed the door, staring at the heavy envelope in her hands. The return address made her breath hitch. Hale and Associates, Manhattan Legal Group, a firm she'd only seen on Tom's television interviews, a firm far above her world. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter, printed on thick ivory stationery, the kind reserved for powerful people with powerful secrets. She read it once, then twice. Then a third time, her pulse pounding louder with each line. "We request a confidential meeting regarding your biological father, Mr. Richard Hale." Biological father. The words sat on the page like lightning. Olivia dropped into a kitchen chair, the letter shaking in her hands. Her father was dead. Her mother had said so her entire life. Linda never lied, not about big things. Not about something like this. Unless she had. Her chest tightened with confusion. Who was Richard Hale? Why would a billionaire, because she recognized the name from finance headlines, reach out to her? And how did he even know who she was? She hurried to her bedroom and dug through the old wooden chest she had brought from the Midwest. She sifted through childhood drawings, receipts from her earliest Chicago jobs, and finally an old envelope with her mother's handwriting. A few loose papers spilled out, hospital forms, a faded photo of Linda at 19, and a worn business card. Richard Hale Investment Group. Younger face. Samanama. Her mother had saved it. Hidden it. Feared it. Tears blurred Olivia's vision. Why? Why would Linda lie about him being gone? Why hide him? Protect her from what? That night, when Tom returned home smelling of whiskey and expensive perfume that wasn't hers, Olivia hid the letter under the mattress. He didn't notice. He barely looked at her. The next morning, while Tom was in the shower prepping for another important meeting, Olivia opened his laptop to search for more information on Richard Hale. But instead, something else appeared, an email draft addressed to Kayla. "She's breaking down more each day. I'll get her to sign the papers soon. Don't worry. The baby complicates things, but I'm handling it. She won't get a dime." Her throat closed. The betrayal stung sharper than ever, but something else rose beneath it, anger. A slow, growing fire she didn't recognize at first. A fire strong enough to replace fear with resolve. That afternoon, she made a decision. She grabbed the letter, threw her coat over her shoulders, and took a cab to Midtown. The building was tall, sleek, intimidating, everything she wasn't. But when she stepped into the marble lobby, chin trembling, something inside her whispered her mother's words. "You deserve a life bigger than fear." She told the receptionist her name. Within minutes, she was escorted to a private floor where the city skyline stretched endlessly behind glass walls. A door opened, and the man who stepped out looked older than the photo, but unmistakable. Silver hair, sharp eyes, a presence that filled the room like gravity. "Olivia?" he asked, voice soft, almost breaking. "I've waited a long time to meet you." Her breath caught, her life shifted, her world split open, because the man standing before her was the one person Tom should never have crossed. The private conference room felt more like a museum than an office, quiet, polished, full of expensive stillness. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened onto Central Park, the treetops brushed with late afternoon gold. Olivia stood frozen in the doorway, clutching her purse like a lifeline. Richard Hale didn't rush toward her. He didn't overwhelm her with questions. He simply looked at her, really looked like a man trying to memorize a face he'd searched decades for. "You look so much like her," he murmured, voice thick. "Like Linda." Her knees nearly buckled at the sound of her mother's name spoken by a stranger with such softness. Richard motioned gently toward a chair. "Please, sit. I know this is a lot." A young man entered quietly, a tall, calm figure in a tailored charcoal suit. He carried 2 Starbucks cups and set one in front of Olivia without saying a word. "This is Ethan," Richard said. "My financial advisor, and someone I trust." 7. Ethan offered a small smile, steady and reassuring, the kind that doesn't demand anything in return. She nodded back, her heartbeat uneven. Richard waited until the door closed behind Ethan before speaking again. "I owe you the truth," he said. "All of it." Olivia's fingers tightened around the cup. "My mother told me my father was dead." Richard inhaled slowly, as if the words pained him. "I asked her to tell you that." The room tilted. She blinked hard. "Why would you do that?" He leaned forward, elbows resting on the table. "Because when Linda got pregnant, I was not the man I am today. I made mistakes, serious ones. I had enemies, competitors, people who would have used you both to get to me. When she left, she said she didn't want your life tied to mine. She wanted you safe, anonymous, free." Olivia swallowed. She was afraid. She had every right to be. His voice cracked slightly. "I tried to help from afar, college funds, security contacts, health insurance, but she returned every check. She didn't want you growing up under pressure or danger. I respected that." Olivia felt her throat tighten. "So, why now? Why send for me now?" Richard reached into a leather folder and placed a document on the table, an old photo of Linda laughing, younger, brighter, holding a baby with a blanket wrapped around her. "You," he said gently. "This is the photo I kept on my desk for 27 years. Olivia's breath hitched. "Linda contacted me before she died," he continued softly. "She said you might need me one day. That fear was creeping into your life the way it once consumed hers. She told me to wait, to stay out of your way until the moment came." The weight of those words pressed into Olivia's chest. Her mother, protective even in death, had left a door open. "And when my investigators told me about your marriage," Richard said, "I knew the moment had come sooner than anyone expected." Her heart thudded painfully. "You know about Tom." "I know everything." His eyes hardened, the tenderness replaced by the cold, lethal calm of a man who had built empires. "I know he's having an affair. I know he's been creating false reports about your mental stability. I know he plans to take everything from you." Olivia's tears blurred the skyline. "Why would he do that?" "Because some men mistake kindness for weakness," Richard replied. "But you aren't weak. You just haven't had someone in your corner." He paused. "Until now." Ethan re-entered, carrying a slim binder. He placed it in front of her, voice low and steady. "Everything you need to protect yourself is in here. Documents, legal counsel, financial options. You're not alone anymore, Olivia." The room fell silent. For the first time in months, she felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not shame, not helplessness. Strength. Small and trembling, but alive. She wiped her tears. "What do I have to do?" Richard's voice softened. "Just let him show who he really is. We'll take it from there." Olivia exhaled slowly. Tom had no idea. He thought she was isolated, broken, defenseless. But he was about to learn the truth. He hadn't married a powerless girl. He had married the daughter of the one man who could turn his entire world upside down. The cab ride back to the apartment felt unreal, like Olivia was floating between two versions of her life, the girl she had been that morning and the woman she was becoming by nightfall. Her hands rested over her belly, protectively, instinctively. She whispered to the tiny life inside her, "I'm not letting him hurt us again." Yeah. When she stepped into the apartment, Tom was in the living room, pacing, speaking sharply into his phone. He didn't notice her at first, but she heard every word. "No, she's almost at the point. She's emotional, irrational. She'll sign, trust me. Pause. I told you, Kayla, I'm handling it. She won't get a cent. I'll make sure the judge sees it my way." Olivia didn't move, afraid he'd hear her gasp. Kayla's voice echoed faintly through the speaker. Olivia didn't need to hear every word to understand the meaning. They were planning her collapse. Together. When Tom finally turned and spotted her, he ended the call abruptly, slipping on a smile so fake it almost shook loose from his face. "There you are." "I was worried," he lied. "No, you weren't," she said quietly. He blinked, surprised by the calm in her voice. Olivia walked past him and went straight to the bedroom. She knew if she stayed in that room another minute, she'd crumble under the weight of years of manipulation. Instead, she packed a small overnight bag, simple clothes, a bottle of prenatal vitamins, her mother's note, and the letter from Richard hidden at the bottom. Before she left, she walked back into the living room. "I'm going to stay with a friend for a couple days," she said. Tom scoffed. "What friend? You barely know anyone here." Olivia met his eyes, steady for the first time. "You're right. But I don't need to justify where I go." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're being dramatic. Again. Sit down and stop making this bigger than it is." "No." The word came out soft but firm enough to crack the air between them. Tom's expression tightened, like someone losing grip on a leash. "You're pregnant, Olivia. You need stability. I can tell the court." She cut him off. "I'm not afraid of you anymore." His jaw twitched, but she didn't give him the satisfaction of fear. She grabbed her coat and walked out the door. For the first time in months, the hallway didn't feel like a tunnel. It felt like an exit. She didn't go to a friend. She went to her mother's grave. The cemetery was quiet, the trees almost bare, the air sharp with early winter chill. She knelt beside Linda's stone, tracing the engraved letters with trembling fingers. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered. "Why did you carry everything alone?" The wind answered with a hollow whistle. She hugged her knees, tears dripping into the grass. Despite everything Richard had told her, part of her still felt abandoned. Part of her still felt like the little girl waiting at the window for a father who never came home. But slowly, her breathing steadied. She remembered her mother's last words to her before the wedding. "Choose a man who lifts you, not one who crushes you." She hadn't listened then, but she would now. On the way back to the city, she stopped at a Barnes & Noble, one of the quiet ones tucked between old brownstones. In the self-help aisle, she picked up two books almost instinctively, Atomic Habits and The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F times K. Books she had seen recommended online, books people swore helped them rebuild their lives. She bought a notebook too, a blank one. She would fill it with plans, not fears. When she returned to New York, Ethan was waiting outside the Hale building, concern etched into his usually calm face. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Not yet, but I will be." Ethan held the door open for her. "Ready?" She inhaled deeply, clutching her notebook like armor. "Yes," she said. "Tell Richard. I want to proceed." Because she wasn't just leaving Tom. She was preparing for the moment he would try to destroy her, and she'd be ready when the tables turned. The next week unfolded like a silent chess match. Tom moving arrogantly, confidently, believing he controlled the board, while Olivia, Richard, and Ethan quietly arranged their pieces. Every day brought a new shift. Tom grew bolder, convinced her absence meant weakness. Olivia grew steadier, recognizing for the first time that distance wasn't abandonment, it was clarity. She was staying in a quiet suite at the Ritz-Carlton, courtesy of Richard. The room overlooked Central Park, soft morning light spilling over the treetops like a promise. Olivia woke early each day, writing in her notebook, planning her next steps. She didn't tell Tom where she was. Whenever he called, she let it ring until it stopped. But Tom wasn't used to being ignored. By midweek, his calls turned to angry voicemails, complaints, accusations, pleas, threats. The whole spectrum of a man losing his grip. And every message strengthened her resolve. Richard met with her each morning, always gentle but firm, treating her not as a fragile victim, but as a woman preparing to reclaim her life. Ethan joined them too, offering resources, research, quiet support. He noticed things like when she winced from lingering pain near her ribs, or when her hand trembled slightly while holding a cup of tea. He never pushed. He just stood nearby, steady as a lighthouse. One morning, Richard closed a folder and looked at her carefully. "It's time," he said. Olivia exhaled. She knew exactly what he meant. Tom had asked her to dinner, a talk, as he phrased it. She knew that tone. It meant he was ready to push her to the breaking point. He wanted control back. He believed forcing her into a polished public space would corner her into agreeing to his terms. But he didn't know she wasn't coming alone. The plan wasn't revenge. It wasn't cruelty. It was exposure. A chance for Tom to reveal his true self in front of witnesses he desperately wanted to impress. A chance for Olivia to walk away not as the broken wife he painted her to be, but as a woman who finally knew her own worth. That afternoon, Ethan handed her a garment bag. "I know you don't like extravagant things," he said softly, "but you deserve to feel strong when you face him." Inside was a simple black evening dress, not flashy, not loud, but elegant, understated power. She touched the fabric, her throat tightening. "It's beautiful," she whispered. "Not as beautiful as you'll look when you walk away from that table," he replied, voice warm. Richard arranged the logistics, ensuring he'd be seated at a private balcony in the same restaurant, visible enough to matter, hidden enough not to intrude until the moment was right. "I won't interfere unless you want me to," he said. "But he needs to know he can't bully you in the dark anymore." "Hol." Olivia nodded, clutching her notebook to her chest. This wasn't just a dinner. It was the line between the woman she had been and the woman she was becoming. That evening, as she prepared, she caught her reflection in the mirror. Her face looked different, still soft, still kind, but steadier. Older in the best way. She placed a hand on her stomach. "We're okay," she whispered to her baby. "We're going to be okay." The car ride to the Brooklyn waterfront restaurant felt like a long inhale. The city lights shimmered across the East River, the bridge glowing like a pathway into fate. When she stepped out of the car, a breeze lifted her hair. She didn't feel small anymore. Inside, she spotted Tom immediately. He sat at a candlelit table, posture stiff, suit perfect, expression impatient. He glanced at his Rolex, annoyed she wasn't earlier. He wanted control. He expected apology. He expected fear. Instead, Olivia walked toward him with quiet strength, unbroken, unshaken, and no longer his to manipulate. Tom stood, trying to smile. "Finally. I thought you'd run again." But Olivia simply sat, lifted her chin, and met his eyes with a calm he had never seen in her before. The trap was set, and Tom had already stepped into it. He just didn't know it yet. The moment Olivia sat down, Tom's entire posture shifted. He leaned back in his chair like a man certain he owned the moment. A glass of red wine already sat beside his plate, half finished. He swirled it lazily as his eyes traveled over her outfit, her hair, her expression, assessing, calculating, hunting for weakness. "You look put together," he said. "Good. Tonight needs to go smoothly." Smoothly. As if this were a business negotiation, not the destruction of a marriage. The waiter approached with a Mont Blanc pen on a small silver tray. Tom barely acknowledged him, waving for the documents. A Tiffany blue folder appeared almost identical to the one he'd used the night he first ambushed her. Tom slid it across the table. "Here are the divorce papers. Updated. Reasonable. Let's stop dragging this out." Olivia kept her breathing steady. "You made changes?" she asked. "Yes," he said proudly. "Given your emotional tendencies, I added a clause suggesting supervised visitation should you choose to keep the baby." Her chest tightened. "Supervised, Tom. No drama. Just sign." "Pod." He tapped the first page. "It's better for everyone." Everyone meaning himself, Kayla, his career. He watched her like a hawk waiting for prey to collapse. But Olivia didn't collapse. She opened the folder calmly, flipping page by page. Not fast, not slow, purposeful. Tom's confident smile wavered at the edges, just slightly. "You didn't even read this last time," he said. "I'm different now," Olivia replied. He snorted. "Sure." She ignored him. Her fingers didn't tremble, not tonight. Not with Richard seated in the private balcony above, observing quietly behind smoked glass. Not with Ethan barely 20 feet away, pretending to enjoy a drink at the bar while keeping a protective eye on her. Not with her baby growing inside her, reminding her what she was fighting for. Tom pushed the pen toward her. "Come on, Olivia. Sign." She looked up. "Are you sure this is what you want?" His jaw tightened. "Of course I'm sure. You're unstable, clingy, and honestly holding me back." "One." The words slid across the candlelit table like poisoned knives. But instead of slicing her open, they revealed the truth she had been blind to for so long. "All right," she whispered. She picked up the Mont Blanc. Tom smirked, victorious. And then, without hesitation, Olivia signed her name. One stroke. Another. Final flourish. Done. Tom exhaled with relief. Good girl. The words stung, but they no longer controlled her. He reached for the folder, already rehearsing the story he'd tell Kayla, the partners at the firm, everyone who mattered in his meticulously cultivated life. But Olivia kept her hand on the papers. "Tom," she said softly, "I want to tell you something before you leave this table." He raised a brow, annoyed. "What now?" She closed the folder gently and leaned back. "My father will want to review the terms." Tom blinked. "Your father?" "Olivia, your father is dead." She shook her head slowly. "No, not that father." Confusion flickered across his face, then irritation, then something darker. "What are you talking about?" Olivia lifted her chin and nodded toward the balcony. A tall, silver-haired figure stepped into view. Calm. Powerful. Impossible to ignore. Richard Hale, one of the most influential men in Manhattan. Her biological father. Tom went rigid, color draining from his face. The wine glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. What is he doing here?" Tom whispered. Olivia's voice remained steady. "He's here for me. And he's been waiting a long time." Tom swallowed hard. You're lying. This is insane." "It's the truth," she said. "And he knows everything." "Everything." Tom's breath hitched. Panic flashed in his eyes. For the first time, he wasn't the man in control. He was the man being judged. And as Richard began walking down the stairs toward their table, Olivia folded her hands calmly in her lap. Because the moment Tom feared most had finally arrived. For a long, breathless moment, the restaurant froze. Forks hovered midair. Conversations died mid-sentence. The soft clinking of glasses dimmed into a hush so complete that even the river outside seemed to pause. Every pair of eyes followed the same point of gravity. Richard Hale descending the staircase toward Olivia's table, his presence cutting through the room like a blade wrapped in velvet. Tom stood quickly, too quickly, knocking the edge of the table. The water glasses trembled. His chest rose and fell in sharp, panicked breaths. Mr. Hale," he stammered, voice cracking. "I didn't know you were here tonight." Richard didn't answer right away. He reached the bottom of the stairs, his expression calm, but unreadable, the kind of calm that made powerful men sweat. He laid a steady hand on the back of Olivia's chair before shifting his gaze to Tom. "Thomas Reed," he said, his tone polite in a way that felt colder than any accusation. "I've heard a great deal about you recently." Tom swallowed hard. "Sir, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Olivia has been from." Richard raised a hand. Just a small gesture. But it silenced Tom instantly. Across the room, one of Tom's senior partners, Gerald Hawkins, sat rigid at a nearby table with a hedge fund client. Both men stared at the scene with widening eyes. Gerald leaned toward his companion and whispered something that made the man sit straighter. Suddenly alert. Olivia noticed it all. She also noticed something Tom didn't. Recognition. These men knew exactly who Richard was, which meant they also knew exactly how much power he held over contracts, investments, legal partnerships, everything Tom's career depended on. Richard pulled out the chair beside Olivia and sat, never breaking eye contact with Tom. "I understand," Richard began, each word deliberate, "that you have been restructuring your personal life and attempting to secure a very one-sided divorce from my daughter." Tom's mouth opened and closed, like he was choking on invisible water. "Sir, she never told me. How could I have known she was my daughter?" Richard finished for him. "You didn't ask. You didn't care." A small crowd had begun to form, people pretending to check the dessert menu, others murmuring to servers. Even the pianist paused, fingers hovering above the keys, as though the moment demanded silence. Tom tried again. "Mr. Hale, I think you're getting only one side of the story. Olivia has been Team Fiss." Richard's voice sharpened just enough to slice. "I've seen the messages, Tom." The blood drained from Tom's face, because he knew exactly which messages Richard meant. The ones promising Kayla a future. The ones undermining Olivia's mental state. The ones detailing how to corner her legally. The ones where he dared to say she would crumble on schedule. Where, how? Tom stuttered. Ethan, who had been quietly watching from the bar, rose and walked over. He placed a small tablet on the table. Its screen lit up with neatly organized evidence: texts, emails, call logs, financial transfers to Kayla, drafts of legal motions Tom had never shown Olivia. Tom's knees buckled, and he grabbed the back of his chair to steady himself. "This is illegal," he snapped, voice cracking. "You can't spy on me." "It's not spying," Ethan replied calmly. "It's discovery. Something you, as an attorney, should be familiar with." A soft gasp rippled through nearby guests. Tom's senior partner had stood up now, eyes wide with dawning horror, already calculating the fallout. Richard leaned forward. "When you chose to mistreat my daughter, you chose to do so while employed at a firm directly dependent on my portfolio. That was your mistake, Tom. A fatal one." Tom's breath came fast, frantic. "Mr. Hale, please let me explain. Olivia is unstable. That was the moment Olivia stood. Her chair scraped softly against the floor, but the sound felt thunderous. She faced Tom with a steadiness she never knew she had. "Don't lie about me," she said, "not anymore." The firmness in her voice silenced the room completely. Even Tom froze. And then, because the universe has a dark sense of timing, Tom's phone buzzed loudly on the table. A message preview flashed. "Emergency meeting tomorrow. 8 a.m. Firm leadership," followed by another. "Indefinite suspension pending review." His world was cracking, breaking, collapsing at the speed he once used to break her. Tom sank into his chair, mouth trembling, eyes darting between Richard, Ethan, and Olivia as if begging for a lifeline. None came. Because this moment, the moment he feared, the moment he deserved, had only just begun. Tom barely slept. The moment he stumbled back into the apartment, his apartment with Kayla. Not Olivia, his lungs felt too tight, as if the walls themselves were closing in. The view of the East River, once his badge of success, now shimmered with a sickening reminder. He had no control left. None. He paced the living room until dawn, trying to convince himself that last night had been a nightmare. Richard Hale couldn't really be Olivia's father. The evidence couldn't be real. She couldn't possibly have had the courage to expose him like that. Olivia, the woman he'd spent years convincing she was weak, had turned the entire power structure of his life upside down in a single dinner. His phone buzzed for the 100th time. Another email from the firm. "Thomas, you are required for a disciplinary review at 8 a.m. Required. Not invited. Not requested. Required." His stomach lurched. Kayla emerged from the bedroom, silk robe tied loosely around her waist. Her hair was perfect. Her expression was not. She crossed her arms, staring at him like he was something she'd stepped in. "What happened?" she hissed. "Why is my inbox blowing up with your name? Why is everyone talking about Richard Hale being at your dinner with your wife?" Tom flinched at the last word. Wife. Olivia had been his shield, his alibi, his stepping stone. He never imagined she'd become his downfall. He rubbed his forehead. "Just give me a minute." "No, Tom," Kayla snapped. "You told me she was fragile, weak, easy to manipulate. You swore you had everything under control." Tom snapped back. "I did. Until that man showed up." Kayla groaned, pressing her fingers to her temples. Do you know what this means? His company works with half our firm's biggest clients. If he pulls out, Tom cut her off, voice rising. I know what it means. Silence. Kayla stared at him, eyes narrowing with something cold and calculating. Tom, she said quietly, I can't go down with you. His stomach dropped. What are you saying? But he knew. He knew before she even spoke. I need to protect my career, she said. So, I'm distancing myself. Effective immediately. Kayla, don't do this, he begged. You said you loved me. She laughed a sharp, humorless sound. Love? Tom, you can't even protect yourself. She grabbed her bag, heels clicking across the floor, every step cutting into him like a blade. Before leaving, she paused at the door. And Tom, don't call me again. It's over. Sen. The door slammed, leaving the apartment colder than ever. At 7:50 a.m., Tom walked into the firm's towering building on Park Avenue. The receptionist, usually chatty and bright, wouldn't meet his eyes. The elevator ride felt like an execution march. When he stepped into the conference room, 3 partners sat across from him with stone-hard expressions. Thomas, Gerald Hawkins began. We've received evidence of misconduct. Extensive misconduct. Oh. Tom opened his mouth, but Gerald held up a hand. You will not speak until instructed. The next 20 minutes unfolded like a legal autopsy. Emails, text messages, altered case notes, conflict of interest violations connected to Kayla, drafts of manipulative filings against Olivia, and the worst, a recorded phone call he had no memory of, where he bragged to a colleague about breaking his wife. Tom felt sweat gather under his collar. I can explain. You can't, Gerald said sharply. And even if you could, the board will not tolerate this scandal. Richard Hale has already frozen all pending contracts with us. Do you understand how destructive that is? Tom's heart pounded. Please give me one chance. You're suspended, Gerald said. Effective immediately. And you should prepare yourself. This will likely end in disbarment. Disbarment. The word hit like a punch to the chest. His career, his life shattered in real time. Security escorted him out. People watched. People whispered. People took photos. Each click of a camera was a nail in the coffin of the man he used to be. Outside, in the cold morning light, Tom's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Actions have consequences. Mr. Reed. You taught Olivia that. Now she's learning to fight back. Tom looked around desperately, but saw no one. For the first time, he understood the truth. His downfall had only just begun. And Olivia wasn't done with him yet. The suite at the Ritz-Carlton slowly stopped feeling like a hiding place and began to feel like a sanctuary. Each morning, sunlight filtered through the tall windows and warmed the corner where Olivia sat with her notebook, the same notebook she'd bought the day she visited her mother's grave. Now it brimmed with lists, goals, sketches, and dreams she'd never let herself imagine before. Richard knocked softly before entering, always respectful, always gentle. He didn't hover, he didn't push. He simply made himself available, like a father who knew he'd missed decades but was determined not to miss another day. You slept better, he noted one morning. Olivia nodded. I guess when you stop living in fear, the body remembers how to rest. So, he smiled proud, relieved, maybe even a little emotional. Good, because it's time to build, not recover. And so, they began. Ethan joined them every morning, laptop always under his arm, tie slightly crooked in a way Olivia found oddly comforting. He walked her through business structures, financial options, and contacts she could trust, not the kind who wanted to attach themselves to Richard Hale's daughter, but the kind who respected what she wanted to create. You have a natural talent for event work, Ethan said as he laid documents across the table. Your former agency didn't see it, but I've seen your layouts, your notes, your attention to detail. You're not an assistant, you're a director. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not sincerely, not without an agenda. I don't want the business to be about his money, she said quietly. I want it to be mine. Ethan nodded. Then we'll build it with the right boundaries. Richard stepped closer. Seed money is yours if you want it, but I want you to treat it as a loan, not a gift. Your success should belong to you. Olivia's throat tightened at the fairness of it. She agreed. By the end of the week, they had formed the foundation of something new. Carter and Hale Experiences, a boutique event company with a focus on high-impact, emotionally grounded client experiences. Not flashy, not shallow, not the hollow luxury Tom always chased. Olivia planned events that meant something: charity luncheons, community fundraisers, corporate retreats that prioritized mental health. Her first major event was for a women's support initiative Richard funded. She spent hours designing everything. that felt warm, speakers who inspired, spaces that invited real connection. For the first time in a long time, she felt capable, strong, worthy. But building a life wasn't just about business. It was about healing the heart Tom had tried to break. Ethan was there through it all, never pushing, never hinting, but always noticing. When Olivia's hand trembled, he steadied her without comment. When her eyes filled with tears at unexpected moments, he simply sat near her until they passed. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of everything she'd survived. One afternoon, after a long meeting, she found him adjusting flowers in a vase of flowers he claimed looked unhappy. Olivia laughed for the first time in weeks, a soft, surprised sound. "Why are you helping?" she asked. Ethan shrugged. "Because you deserve people who do things without demanding credit." Her chest warmed at his words, so simple, yet so unfamiliar. Still, Olivia wasn't ready for anything more than friendship. He knew that. He respected it. And that respect alone built something deeper than romance: trust. Richard, too, was healing in his own way. Sometimes Olivia caught him watching her with a mixture of guilt and awe. One evening, he admitted, "I spent years afraid I'd never get the chance to make things right. Having you here, it feels like I've been given a second life." Olivia squeezed his hand. "We're making one together." Weeks passed. Her company grew faster than anyone expected. Clients called. Partners asked for meetings. Her own reputation began to form. Olivia wasn't surviving anymore. She was rising. And as she stood in her new office, overlooking Central Park, hands on her growing belly, she whispered, "We're building a life they can't take from us." But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Tom, spiraling deeper, wasn't done making mistakes. And his next one would push Olivia into the fight of her life. The first time Olivia returned to the Midwest, after discovering the truth about her father, she expected the trip to reopen old wounds. Instead, it felt like threading two worlds together, her past and her future, one careful stitch at a time. Richard insisted on coming with her, not as a billionaire looming over everything, but as a man desperate to reclaim the years he lost. They arrived on a quiet Sunday morning. The town looked just as she remembered, the diner sign flickering, the uneven sidewalks, the sound of wind sweeping across open fields. It was humble, cracked in places, but safe. And that safety, she knew now, had been paid for with her mother's fear. Richard stepped out of the car slowly, like he was entering a sacred place he'd been forbidden from for decades. "She raised you well," he murmured, voice hushed with emotion, "stronger than I ever could have imagined." Olivia swallowed hard. "She always wanted to protect me." "From me," he whispered, barely audible. She didn't correct him. They both knew the truth. Her mother had loved him once, deeply. But she had been terrified, too terrified. The shadows around his early career would touch her daughter. Richard wasn't the ruthless man he used to be, yet the echoes of his past lingered like bruises that never fully faded. They visited Linda's grave together. Richard brought lilies. Olivia brought the small necklace her mother used to wear, a simple silver heart, tarnished and worn but precious. She placed it gently on the grass. "Hi, Mom," Olivia whispered. "I'm okay. I promise." The wind rustled through the trees like an answer. Richard knelt beside her, his usually steady hands trembling. "Linda, I know I can't undo what fear cost us, but I want to honor what you built. Your daughter is extraordinary." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, soft ones, not from grief, but from the relief of feeling seen by a father she once thought was a ghost. They stayed at her childhood home for an hour. The new owners let them walk through. Olivia wandered from room to room, touching faded wallpaper, remembering the scent of lavender detergent, remembering late nights counting bills with her mother, remembering how small the world once felt. "It wasn't big," Olivia said, "but it was safe." She made it safe. And now you're building something bigger, Richard replied gently. Not because of money, because of courage. See. On the flight back to New York in Richard's private jet, Olivia stared out the window at the clouds. The leather seat was soft, the air smooth, the world below distant. It was the opposite of everything she grew up with, but she didn't feel out of place. Not anymore. Ethan sat across from her, working quietly on his laptop. Every now and then, he glanced at her, not pitying, not probing, just present. When she caught him looking, he smiled in that quiet, reassuring way he had. The kind of smile that told her she wasn't alone on this journey, no matter how complicated it became. Back in Manhattan, Olivia resumed building her company, but something inside her had shifted. She moved with more certainty, spoke with more confidence, and trusted her instincts in ways she never had before. She wasn't the scared wife Tom tried to mold. She wasn't the small-town girl afraid of shadows. She was a woman rebuilding her identity from truth, not fear. Clients noticed. Her team noticed. Even Ethan noticed, especially when she began laughing more, her spirit returning piece by piece. But healing wasn't a straight line. Sometimes, late at night in her suite, she still woke with fear gripping her chest, imagining Tom's voice, Tom's manipulation, Tom's threats. Trauma doesn't disappear just because truth arrives. Yet each time she faltered, she remembered the trip home. She remembered her mother's strength. She remembered Richard's remorse. She remembered that brokenness wasn't the end, it was the beginning. She was fighting for herself, for her baby, for the life she deserved. But as Olivia's world grew steadier, Tom spiraled further out of control. And soon, he would make a desperate move, one that would put Olivia and her unborn child in real danger. Tom used to believe rock bottom was something that happened to other men who weren't smart enough, ruthless enough, ambitious enough. Men who failed because they hesitated. He had always been certain he was different, untouchable. The kind of man who could bend the world to his will and walk away without consequence. But now, consequences stalked him like shadows he couldn't outrun. His suspension became public within hours. Legal blogs picked it up. Then a finance gossip page. Then a viral TikTok posted by a paralegal from his firm titled, "When Your Boss Gets Iced by a Billionaire at Dinner." Within a day, half of Manhattan's legal circle knew Tom Reed had major issues with misconduct. Kayla blocked his number by noon. By evening, his landlord emailed him a notification. The lease was being terminated due to potential reputational risk. He had 30 days to vacate. 30 days to pack up the life he built on lies, manipulation, and borrowed charm. Tom spent the night sitting on the floor of the now too quiet apartment, surrounded by boxes he hadn't packed. The expensive furniture looked ridiculous under the harsh glow of the overhead light. The place had never felt like home, it had always felt like a stage. Now it felt like the final scene of a play no one wanted tickets to anymore. His phone buzzed again. He lunged for it, hoping for good news. Instead, he saw a headline. Hale Foundation launches new women's initiative, directed by Olivia Carter. His throat tightened. Olivia's photo glowed from the screen, smiling softly, radiant in a simple navy dress, a hand resting protectively on her stomach. She looked stronger than he remembered. Happier. Whole. He hurled the phone across the room. It crashed into the wall and shattered. "How?" he whispered, voice shaking. "How did she do this to me?" But deep down, he knew the truth. Olivia hadn't done anything to him. He had done everything to himself. Still, denial clung to him like poison. The next morning, he forced himself to go out. He told himself he needed to fix things, but the truth was uglier. He needed to feel relevant again. Needed anyone to acknowledge his existence. He tried calling partners from the firm. No answer. He tried stopping by a client's office. Security turned him away. He tried messaging Kayla from a different number. She replied with a single text, "Do not contact me again, or I will report you." Panic crawled up his throat. He walked the streets for hours, passing the gleaming towers of Park Avenue, watching other men in suits hurry to important places, places he no longer belonged. Faces he used to greet turned away when they recognized him. By late afternoon, he ended up parked in his Mercedes in a quiet spot under the Queensboro Bridge. He sat behind the wheel, gripping it until his knuckles whitened, staring at the city he once believed he would conquer. His reflection in the window didn't look like a conqueror. It looked like a man coming undone. A bottle of cheap whiskey sat beside him. He took slow, bitter sips, letting the burn numb the sharp edges inside him. His thoughts spiraled. He blamed Olivia. He blamed Richard. He blamed the firm. He blamed everyone except the one person responsible: himself. Night fell. Rain started. And with it, something in Tom snapped. "I'm going to talk to her," he muttered. "She owes me that." Hull. He convinced himself Olivia still belonged to him in some twisted emotional ledger, that she had no right to walk away without hearing his version of the story, without giving him a chance to fix his image, without pitying him the way she used to. He drove across Manhattan with anger simmering inside him like boiling water. When he reached the building where Olivia was working late, he slipped inside behind a delivery driver. Security didn't see him. He knew he shouldn't be there. He knew he wasn't welcome. But desperation erased caution. He wandered through the quiet halls until he spotted Olivia emerging from a meeting room, hand resting on her stomach, exhausted but peaceful. For a moment, Tom froze. She looked so gentle, so serene, so unlike the terrified woman he had broken. A twisted warmth curled inside him. "I can still fix this," he whispered. He stepped forward. Olivia. Her head snapped up. Her entire body went rigid. He took another step, just one, but it was one step too many. Because he didn't know that Ethan had been standing behind her. He didn't know Ethan wasn't unarmed. He didn't know the building had upgraded security the day Olivia moved in. And he didn't know that tonight. His reckless desperation would push Olivia into the most dangerous moment of her life. The night of the Hale Foundation Charity Gala arrived with a kind of electric intensity that hummed through every corner of the Plaza Hotel. Chandeliers glowed like constellations overhead. Orchestral music floated through the marble lobby, and guests in sleek tuxedos and glittering gowns gathered with glasses of champagne, unaware they were about to witness a storm disguised as elegance. Olivia stood backstage adjusting the final details of the event she had spent months planning. Her dress, simple Dior silk, in a deep midnight shade, felt like an armor she never knew she needed. Her hair was pulled back into a soft, elegant twist, and a single diamond stud sparkled at her ear, a quiet symbol of her new life, chosen not for flash but for strength. Her hands rested on her stomach for a moment. The baby kicked lightly. She whispered, "We'll get through tonight. I promise." Ethan approached from behind, offering a gentle smile. "Everything looks perfect," he said. "Your mother would be proud." Those words nearly undid her. She nodded slowly. "I hope so." Out in the ballroom, hundreds of guests took their seats, murmuring excitedly as the lights dimmed. This event wasn't just another gala, it was a statement. Olivia's first major event as the director of the Women's Renewal Initiative. Her chance to show she could build something meaningful, something strong, something that couldn't be stolen or controlled. Richard entered the ballroom to a ripple of recognition. Cameras flashed. Executives rose to greet him. In the past, Olivia would have shrunk behind him like a shadow. Tonight, she stood beside him as his equal, his daughter. But the glimmering scene held a rot at the edges. Tom was here. She didn't see him come in. But she felt him in the room, the way the air tightened, the way her skin prickled, the way Ethan's posture shifted subtly beside her. Tom had been allowed in as a guest of someone who didn't know the chaos he'd caused. Security had instructions to watch him closely. When Olivia finally spotted him, he was lingering near the far wall, tuxedo slightly wrinkled, hair unkempt, eyes darting around like he was searching for oxygen. He looked nothing like the polished attorney she once married. He looked desperate and dangerous. The program began. Olivia stepped onto the stage to introduce the first speaker. Applause filled the room, warm, thunderous, supportive. She steadied herself with a breath. As she spoke, she saw Tom moving slowly toward the center of the room, weaving through tables. Each step tightened the knot in her stomach. Ethan noticed too, and immediately signaled security. But Tom was quicker than he looked. When Olivia finished her speech and stepped off stage, Tom appeared beside her from the dark corridor backstage. "Olivia," he said. Her name came out broken, fragile, not the commanding tone he once used. Now it was a plea wrapped in panic. She froze. Her heart hammered, not from fear for herself, but from fear for her child. Ethan was at her side instantly. "Step back, Tom, now." Tom lifted his hand slightly. I just need to talk to her. Please." His voice cracked. He looked like a man holding himself together with threads. Olivia swallowed, her voice steady. "You shouldn't be here. I had to see you," he pleaded. "Everything is falling apart. My job, Kayla, I've lost everything." "That wasn't my doing," Olivia said quietly. "You did that." Tom shook his head violently. No, you don't understand. You can fix this. You can talk to your father. You can tell him to stop. I'm begging you." She took a step back, hand instinctively covering her belly. "I'm not saving you from the consequences of what you did to me." Something shifted in Tom, then something ugly. His desperation twisted into anger. His voice dropped to a cold, trembling whisper. "You ruined me. You owe me." He moved toward her too fast. Before he could reach her, 2 security guards intercepted him, gripping his arms. He thrashed wildly, shouting her name, shouting threats, shouting apologies, none of them coherent, all of them soaked in panic. Guests turned. Cameras flashed. Gasps filled the ballroom. But Olivia didn't crumble. She lifted her chin, eyes steady, spine straight. Richard stepped forward and placed a protective hand on her shoulder. Ethan stood close, his presence a wall between her and the chaos. Tom saw it the family he tried to isolate her from, the life he tried to strip away, the strength he never believed she possessed. And in that moment, surrounded by everything he lost, Tom broke. They dragged him out of the ballroom, his cries fading into echoes. Olivia inhaled deeply and stepped back into the light. The crowd erupted into applause, not for the drama, not for the spectacle, but for the woman who had risen above it. Tonight wasn't a collapse. It was a coronation. And Tom Reed had just been publicly dethroned. The courthouse steps felt colder than the chilled November air. Olivia paused at the bottom, one hand steadying her baby bump, the other clutching a leather folder Ethan had given her earlier that morning. Inside were documents, proof, protection, truth. Everything Tom once believed she would never have. Richard stood beside her in a tailored charcoal coat, his presence calm and immovable. Ethan hovered a respectful distance away, close enough to support her but far enough to give her space. Reporters crowded behind the barricades, calling her name, calling Richard's name, calling Tom's name with the eagerness of people hungry for scandal. Olivia didn't look at them. She wasn't here for spectacle. She was here for closure. Inside the courtroom, Tom was already seated at the respondents' table, shoulders slumped, suit wrinkled, hair unkempt. His lawyer, one of the few who agreed to represent him, shifted uncomfortably as Olivia walked in. Tom's eyes flicked toward her. Shock. Shame. Something like regret. But none of it mattered now. She took her seat beside her attorney, a compassionate woman Richard had hand-picked. When Olivia settled in, Ethan quietly placed a bottle of water beside her, offering a gentle nod before sitting in the gallery. The kindness steadied her more than he knew. The judge entered. Everyone rose. The proceedings began. Tom's attorney made an attempt weak, hurried to paint Tom as emotionally distressed and misunderstood. The judge listened politely, expression unreadable. Then Olivia's attorney stood. What followed wasn't aggression. It wasn't cruelty. It was clarity, sharp, clean, undeniable. Email transcripts, manipulated financial filings, voice recordings, altered reports, a pattern of coercion, a pattern of gaslighting, a pattern of escalating hostility. The courtroom air thickened with each piece of evidence. Then came the security footage from the Hale Foundation gala, the moment Tom lunged toward Olivia before being restrained. The room fell silent. Even Tom's attorney closed his eyes for a moment, defeated. The judge exhaled slowly. "Mr. Reed, do you have anything to say before I rule?" Tom stood, shaky. His voice barely rose above a whisper. "I wasn't myself. I was losing everything," he said. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just wanted my life back." Olivia felt a sting, not sympathy, but the painful recognition of the cycle she had escaped. She lowered her gaze, hand resting on her belly, grounding herself in the life she was protecting. Tom continued, eyes darting around the room. "Olivia, you know me. You know I didn't." She finally looked up. Her voice was steady, stronger than she ever imagined. "I knew the man you pretended to be," she said, "but not the one you became." Tom's mouth trembled. The truth, spoken aloud, hit him harder than any legal blow. The judge cleared his throat. In light of the evidence presented, my ruling is as follows. Full divorce granted. No spousal support owed by the petitioner, Mrs. Carter. No claim to her business, assets, or inheritance. Sole custody awarded to Mrs. Carter. Mandatory therapy and probation for Mr. Reed. A restraining order will be issued immediately. The gavel struck. Final. Irreversible. Just. Tom collapsed into his chair, face buried in his hands. A broken man not because Olivia ruined him, but because he had built his life on a foundation destined to crumble. Olivia rose slowly. Ethan stood from the gallery, meeting her eyes with quiet pride. Richard offered his arm like a father escorting his daughter into a future she had earned with every ounce of courage. As they walked out, a warm beam of sunlight cut across the marble floor. It felt like blessing, like closure, like freedom. Outside, reporters shouted questions. Microphones reached out like hungry hands. Olivia turned to Ethan and whispered, "I'm ready." He nodded, stepping beside her. She faced the crowd not as a victim, not as a broken wife, but as the woman who rebuilt her life piece by piece. "Justice was served today," she said softly. "And my child will be born into a life free of fear." The cameras flashed, capturing not scandal, not drama, but victory. A new beginning. For Olivia. For her baby. For the legacy her mother had protected. And for the first time, the world finally saw her not as the woman Tom tried to break, but as the woman he could never destroy. Snow began falling over Manhattan the night Olivia moved into her new home, a quiet brownstone near Central Park that Richard insisted she choose herself. No penthouse, no skyscraper view. Just a warm, sunlit space with room for a nursery and a small balcony where she could drink morning coffee and feel the city breathe. It felt safe. It felt hers. The first evening she stood on that balcony, wrapped in a soft cream sweater, she whispered into the cold air, "We made it." Her baby kicked gently, as if answering. Life didn't become magically perfect after the trial. Healing never happened in a straight line. But for the first time, Olivia moved through her days without fear tightening around her ribs. Her mornings filled with quiet joy, fresh fruit on the counter, soft classical music humming from her speaker, sunlight warming the wooden floors. At night, she read books about motherhood, sometimes Women Who Run with the Wolves, sometimes Atomic Habits, taking notes in the margins, as if building a map for the future she was determined to create. Her company thrived. Carter and Hale Experiences landed 3 major contracts in 2 months, earning praise from clients who valued the emotional depth she brought to every event. Her story whispered through networks, shared privately among women, gave her business a rare kind of trust. She didn't just create events. She created moments that mattered, moments that healed. And through it all, Ethan remained by her side, not hovering, not pressing, but steady. Some evenings, he stopped by with Starbucks hot chocolate or a stack of design samples for upcoming galas. He always asked how she was feeling, and he really listened in a way she had never known a man could. One cold December afternoon, he helped her assemble the crib. They worked quietly, hands brushing occasionally, each touch sparking something soft and warm inside her chest. When the final piece clicked into place, Ethan stepped back and smiled. "It's perfect," he said. Olivia's voice trembled. "I didn't think I'd ever get here." He looked at her gently. "You got here because you never gave up. You fought for yourself long before anyone else fought for you." Her throat tightened. She wasn't ready to name the feelings blooming in her chest, not yet, but she didn't pull away when Ethan brushed a stray curl behind her ear. She didn't flinch when he whispered, "You deserve every happiness coming your way." For the first time in years, she believed it. In February, she gave birth to a healthy baby girl, Grace. Her tiny fingers curled around Olivia's thumb as if anchoring her to the earth. Richard cried openly in the hospital room, kissing his granddaughter's forehead. "Welcome to the world, little one," he whispered. "You'll never know the fear your mother had to survive. I promise you that." Ethan arrived hours later with flowers and a soft pink blanket. When he saw Olivia holding Grace, something in his face shifted tenderness so deep it made her heart flutter. "Do you want to hold her?" Olivia asked. Ethan hesitated. "Only if you're sure." She nodded. When he cradled Grace, his expression melted into awe. "Hi there," he murmured. "You're safe. Your mom made sure of that." Those words lingered in the room long after he spoke them. Spring arrived slowly, bringing warmth back to the city. One quiet April evening, Olivia, Grace, Richard, and Ethan walked together along Central Park's cherry blossom path. Families picnicked, runners passed, and laughter echoed through blooming branches. Olivia looked at the three people beside her, her father, her daughter, and the man who had helped her rebuild every broken piece. She felt whole, complete, home. Ethan brushed her hand gently with his. Olivia, when you're ready, whenever that may be, I'd like to take you to dinner. One? She looked at him, heart steady, warm, open. I think, she whispered, I might be ready soon. He smiled a soft, hopeful smile. As they continued walking, Grace giggled in her stroller, petals drifting down around them like blessings. Olivia lifted her face to the pink sky. She had survived. She had rebuilt. She had risen. And now, she was stepping into a life filled with love, safety, justice, and peace. A life she created on her own terms. And just like that, our story comes to an end. But you're still here, aren't you? If you're hearing these words, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe you saw a part of yourself in Olivia, her strength, her fear, her courage to walk away, or her belief that life can begin again, even after everything breaks. What this story reminds us is simple but powerful. Healing is not about forgetting the pain, it's about choosing who you become after it. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Olivia's obstacles didn't end her. They carved her into someone wiser, braver, and more compassionate. And Epictetus once said, you become what you give your attention to. The moment she stopped giving attention to fear and started giving it to hope, her entire life shifted. So maybe tonight, you take one quiet step toward your own healing. Maybe you choose yourself the way Olivia finally chose herself. If this story moved you, inspired you, or simply made you feel understood, don't leave quietly, leave a mark. Give this video a like, share it with someone who might need strength today, and subscribe so you and I can keep walking these journeys together.